Are your late payments on your credit reports harming your chances of getting a mortgage? In this video, I'm going to explain how it's possible to get a mortgage even with late payments shown on your credit file. My name's Gindy. I'm one of the senior advisors at Create Finance, so let's get into the video. So let's look at when the late payments were, how many late payments there were, and if the late payments are up to date. So if the late payments occurred within the last 12 months, you may have some limitations on what lenders would lend to you. If the late payments were over 12 months old, most lenders would ignore this. Now let's look at the number of late payments. So if it's just the one missed payment, most lenders would ignore this. However, if there were a combination of number of payments, so for example, if the account went into 3, 4, 5 late payments, most lenders would have a concern around this. You may have limitations in regards to what lenders will lend to you. You may have to pay a slightly higher rate of interest for that reason. I'd always make sure that your late payments are up to date. They'll seem very favourable with the lender and also would increase your chances of getting a mortgage. Now, let's look at the deposit side of things. In the UK, you can buy a property with a 5% deposit. Missing payments or having late payments can have an impact on your credit score. This means that with a 5% deposit and getting a 95% mortgage, your credit score may be dropped, so you may not score high enough to get a mortgage with a high street lender. Therefore, you may need to raise a slightly higher deposit. This could be anywhere from 10% or potentially even 15%. Also, if you've had a number of missed payments, so for example, we covered earlier 3, 4 or 5 missed payments, this will likely mean that you may need to raise a slightly higher deposit. One way to get around this is potentially using a lender that will credit search rather than credit score. So let me just explain how this works. Most lenders in the UK will use a credit score model. So if you've got a high score on Experian or Equifax, the likelihood is you could probably get away with a high street lender. However, there are some lenders in the UK that will just credit search. So they'll search for the adverse. However, if the adverse meets the lender's credit profile, you can still obtain a mortgage. Speak to your broker in more detail and they'll be able to recommend the best solution for you. It's also important to consider what other adverse credit is shown on your credit profile. So we've covered off late payments. If they're just late payments in isolation, it's probably not going to affect your chances of getting a mortgage. However, if the late payments are combined with other adverse credit, such as a CCJ or a default, the lender may class you as high risk. There may be some limitations on if you can achieve a mortgage. You may need to put down a bigger deposit, or it may be that you're paying a slightly higher rate of interest initially, but you can always review your options 2 or 3 years down the line. As an experienced advisor, I would recommend that you get a copy of your credit report. My recommendation for a credit report is checkmyfile.com. So there you go. You can potentially get a mortgage with late payments shown on your credit profile. If you'd like to find out more about mortgages, please check out our other videos.